Hey guys, welcome back to the One Room Schoolhouse. We are here in the WallBuilders collection. We talked yesterday about going through some different biographies, helping highlight some people whose stories are worth noting and remembering. The couple we're going to get into today are the first one, well, I guess we could do Morse first, it doesn't really matter. The two people are Samuel F.B. Morse and then George Washington Carver. Both of them significant contributions, very impressive people in general. Now, it's worth pointing out before we started, Jonathan took a really long time trying to tame the mane because we've been under quarantine so long that it's debatable who has more beautiful locks at this point, him or his wife. They're shampooing together, conditioner. It's just kind of ridiculous, but we're working on it for you. I just actually got like the sheep shears out. My wife just kind of helped me out a little bit. I'm pretty much ready. Pretty much ready for this to be over. Yeah. Ready to move on with life.
Yeah, I know. I'm ready to get back to sports clips.
But as long as we're stuck here together, we'll go over a few more of these stories. So, Samuel F.B. Morse is noted really kind of for electrical, like lines, wires, some codes.
Yep. There was a specific code, right, that he did. The Morse Code. It's named after him. He actually used it because he was the inventor of the telegraph. And if we go back all the way back to 1844 is the first time that the telegraph, he had it working beforehand, but 1844 is the year where, for the first time in history, they send a message from one city to the other. And it's actually, Morse is in the basement of the U.S. Capitol building, and he sends a message all the way to Baltimore, which is,
many miles away.
I think it's many miles, and obviously it was to them, but, Texas, it's like on a map. They're like right next to each other.
It's next door. It's fine.
But Morse sends it. But what's really interesting is what Morse chooses to send in this momentous historical occasion, and it's actually a quote from the Bible, out of the book of Numbers, and it is, "What hath God wrought?" And in fact, he actually hadn't come up with that. It was the daughter of the man who had helped him secure the official patent for the telegraph machine. His daughter had come up to Morse and suggested this, and Morse thought that was such an appropriate sentiment. So the first ever, between cities message sent over electrical wire is a Bible verse, and it's really interesting. Throughout his entire life, Morse commonly referred back to this and talked about the fact that everything I ever did, anything that anybody does, should be towards the glory of God, not towards man, because it's not what hath man wrought, but what hath God wrought.
Well, and for his life too, he was not initially an inventor working with electricity, right? He was an artist. Yeah. He was a painter. He did many other things. And then one day, somebody said something. He heard it kind of stuck in his mind about electrical lines and electricity. And he thought, well, wait a second. Could you communicate through these lines? Could we do that? And it led him through this discovery. And he acknowledged God in this path and this journey along the way. And so it was then very appropriate for him to acknowledge, look what God has done. What hath God wrought? First message ever being sent. And then the Morse Code has been used really ever since his creation of it. It's been used going forward. Military uses it. Yep. And I know that's very dated technology, but still to this day there are some specific situations where the Morse Code has been used. Still people that use different kinds of vessels on water learn Morse Code, so there still is some practical application of it today. Even though, thank God, technology's come so far, it's not as necessary as it used to be. We also have a pretty cool document from him.
Yep, this right here is from 1836. It is a handwritten letter by Morse. So this is during the time that he is working on the telegraph, but it's before his final triumph with it. But you can see his handwriting. And what's really interesting, too, is Tim mentioned that he was kind of an artist beforehand, painter. He was also a little bit of a poet, and so we have this document up online. You can check it out. You can read the transcript. And
if you open it up too, you can see his signature. Just to confirm, this is in fact one of his documents.
Very fancy, Sam F.B. Morse, and then and that's the technical term for that.
So that's actually where Zorro got his from just watching people's penmanship. So have you historically documented that?
Yeah, everybody shoo-shoos back then. George Washington has a
Okay.
Yep.
And that was the sound they made.
While he did that. Yeah.
Okay. We'll just keep moving on. If you do want to know more about him, as we mentioned, there are lots of great biographies about some of these guys with Samuel F.B. Morse. This is one of the collection that's part of one of the things we sell at WallBuilders. We did not write these, but they're
good, fun, introductory pieces.
Yeah, we're trying to make them.
Yeah, some of the spirit and context around their lives.
Trying to make them available to families who homeschool or want their kids to have some great things to read at this point, maybe even over the summer, because good news, looks like school is going to be officially out before very much longer because governors are like, yeah, we're not going back, just save it for the fall. Although a college even canceled fall semester already.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was probably a little bit too soon. But.
Yeah, because people make dumb decisions all the time. Even people who are on academic levels apparently over universities. That's utterly ridiculous, but whatever, we'll keep moving on. So if you want to know more, really cool biography. And now, George Washington Carver, certainly one of the coolest stories from absolute poverty, terrible circumstances. He was born somewhere in the 1860s. It's kind of debated. Nobody really knows when. There wasn't a birth certificate for him. He was born into slavery. He was born to the Moses Carter family. And when the Civil War happens, finally, right, Emancipation Proclamation, and then slavery's ended. You have the several different amendments, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, kind of giving rights to blacks in America. So he is then essentially freed, living in the South, but his mom decides she really likes the Carter family. She wants to stay living with them. They stay living with them. One night, Mom and George get kidnapped, and George is just a little baby.
Yeah.
And the Carter family, Moses Carter, his wife, very concerned. They want to find now these two people who are living with them, who are free people, but they're living with them. Well, they end up finding a guy to try to go figure out where they went. He's only able to bring George back. And so George comes back, Mom presumably dead. There's a lot of different accounts of what might have happened. There's not a really well documented single account. There are a lot of good thoughts, but what we know is Mom didn't come back. Presumably she died somewhere. So George comes back to live with the Carter family. And as he's living with the Carter family, so this is now a boy born into slavery. He's now a free black who's living with his white family, and they start taking care of him and they begin educating him. They're helping him essentially pursue similar kind of ideas of education that maybe some other boys his age would have had the opportunity and privilege to do. But he really has an interest in the outdoors. He has an interest in specifically kind of botany and things related to plants and wants to study and learn about that. Spent a lot of times indoors as well. It was believed that he was very sickly as a kid, so he couldn't work on the farm in ways that maybe boys would have worked on the farm. His family, as they're taking care of him, the Carter family, at 10 years old, he decides, guys, it's been fun. It's been great. I'm going to go out on my own now. So as a 10-year-old, sets off on his own. He puts himself through the rest of school, which we would call it high school. Back then it wasn't called high school, but he finished school and then decides he wants to go to college. So he applied to go to college. He sends in the application. He's approved and actually receives a letter back about how good his application is. You're going to be a great student.
Marks, because he had really applied himself, so gets in on his merits.
Was a very good student, very smart.
This college is quite a ways away, right?
And they've never seen him.
Never seen him. Doesn't have a picture attached to the application, but he walks, right, all the way to the college, which is many miles.
Yeah, that's a task for this teenage boy to do.
But when he gets there,
he shows up to college, and they see him, and they didn't realize he was black. And they saw him, they said, oh, yeah, we don't take your kind here. And they used, right, inappropriate language. We don't take your kind. You got to do something else. So at this point, he's no longer obviously going to that college. He ends up being able to go to Iowa State. He studies at Iowa State. He gets agriculture degree. And when he finishes at Iowa State, he gets invited by Booker T. Washington to come and be part of the university that Booker T. is now doing. So he goes there and he really just starts incredible stuff, inventions.
That's the Tuskegee School, right?
Correct.
And if you're not familiar with Booker T's story, you need to go look him
Yeah,
up.
he's another guy to be worth noting. So one
His
of the things,
autobiography, great.
yeah, one of the things that was very cool about George Washington Carver, and I'm going to read a little excerpt from him. So, and there are several other bios as well of George Washington Carver.
Some really good ones that have come out. This has a lot of his primary resources and things of that nature. This is a really good overall resource as well.
Yeah, and right, this is the one that is kind of is. These were done as kids' school books.
More for kids, probably more for adults, more for research.
Yeah, it's for academic purposes. There you go. But he had a workshop, and he called it God's Little Workshop. He was a devoted Christian, very outspoken about his faith. And so in the midst of what he did with what he called God's Little Workshop, he helped reinvent the Southern economy, because the Southern economy had been built largely on cotton, and cotton had been used so much it depleted the soil, and then boll weevils came, so they really couldn't plant and do well with cotton anymore because the boll weevils ate the cotton and the soil wasn't working very well. So he said, okay, there needs to be something else. He's the guy who said, let's do the peanut. He also helped with a sweet potato. He came up with over 300 inventions from the peanut. Now, let me read you part of what he said. He was giving a speech explaining this, and here's part of his explanation. He said, I asked the great creator what the universe was made for. Ask for something more in keeping with that little mind of yours, he replied, meaning the creator. So I said, well, what was man made for? Little man. You still want to know too much. Cut down the extent of your request and improve the intent. Then I told the creator I wanted to know all about the peanut. He replied that my mind was too small to know all about the peanut. But he said he would give me a handful of peanuts. And God said, behold, I've given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of the earth. To you it shall be for meat I've given. And he goes on telling how God revealed this to him. Now, part of what he says, the creator said, I have given you 3 laws, namely compatibility, temperature, and pressure. All you have to do is take these constituents and put them together, observing these laws, and I will show you why I made the peanut. So what he's saying is, right, the peanut has different components, and when you learn to kind of compose in different ways with what he said was compatibility, temperature, and pressure. When you learn to do it in different ways, you'll find different discoveries from this. From the peanut, he came up with things like soup, instant and dry coffee, linoleum, metal polish, plastic, bleach, wood filler, washing powder, paper, ink, shaving cream, rubbing oil, shampoo, axle grease, synthetic rubber, even came up with milk, and milk that wouldn't curdle in cooking. So just unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, from the peanut.
From the peanut, right? There's never been a time. Now, he came up with cosmetics, came up with makeup from the peanut. There's never been a time, right, that I can imagine someone was like, oh man, I got to get ready to go to town tonight. What do I do? Peanuts, here we go, right? Like peanut butter, like that'd be so weird. How did you come up with this? And he credits God for every one of these discoveries, which is so remarkable in his life. From the sweet potato, he came up with over 100 uses and inventions from the sweet potato beyond just eating, right? Like that's what we know.
It's like I got one right there.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Peanuts, go to the baseball games, right? Like, yes, I get it.
Elephants.
Okay, right. Hadn't even thought of that yet. So they're going to circus.
Dunked on them.
Okay, case arrested. So, really, really remarkable story of how coming from absolute low in life, low station in life, terrible circumstances, and gets finally to college. And still, right, he was from the South, and there's still lots of racism he deals with. He gets to college, and you can't be here because your skin's the wrong color. What he overcame, and the way that God used his life and story, the inventions that he came up with from the peanut, he's really a story that you want to learn more about because, again, everything about his life was faith-motivated, faith-filled. He wanted to be God-honoring. He acknowledged that the reason he's able to do these is that it is Christ who gives me strength because I can do all things through Christ, right? Which is Philippians 4:13.
Reading through his writings, I don't know if there's really very many, if any, other public figures that we've researched who is as God conscious throughout his writings. I mean, it's like you hardly can even go a paragraph or two without him being like, and the only reason I can do any of this is because of God. And what I love too about his story is at the end of his life, obviously he's been a long-standing professor at Tuskegee Institute. He really takes the principle of discipleship And all of a ton of the students who come in, he really takes under his wing and teaches them, obviously not just the agricultural stuff, but a lot of just how do you live life? How do you live life to the glory of God? Spends his entire life teaching not only the South how to farm and all the agricultural stuff, but a whole host of students how to live their life for God too.
He also became an advisor to President Franklin Roosevelt, to Thomas Edison, to Gandhi. So really a well-noted guy. Again, his story is one worth discovering more. And so those are things, if you want to get on WallBuilders.com, you can find some of those bios. You can read more about that. So this week, we're just going to kind of introduce you to some people, tell a little bit about their story, and then just leave it to you. If you want to learn more, obviously you can Google it, or you can get on WallBuilders.com and find those books. Really great resources. Again, these were written for kids. But all that means is if you're an adult, if you want a really easy read, you can get one of these bios, check them out. They really are. And before we sold these, we went through and read them to make sure they weren't having content that we said, okay, that's a major problem. That's contrary to what we know is historically accurate. And so even though there is some liberty taken in places, it really is a good tone, and the tone is very accurate to their life and their story.
A good introduction.
It really is. Good to know more about these guys. So we'll keep doing these videos the rest of the week. We have several more bios. We want to introduce you to some of these people, and hopefully you guys are doing well navigating this. We're praying for you guys. We are in this together, and we'll see you tomorrow.